Hello, my name is Aaron, and you are watching The NOSHOW. This is going to be my second annual Game of the Year, Year in Review, Top 10 list, whatever you want to call it. It's coming a little later than it should have, but apologies for that. We're going to get right to this. This is going to be a long video, so there will be a table of contents in the description. You can kind of click around and watch the video in any order you want. 2017 was an insane year for video games. I'm not the first person to say this, but it was just crazy. There were so many games that came out, and so many of those games are like instant classics that people are going to be talking about and analyzing for years. Certainly I know I will. It was just a bonkers year, and I kind of just barely made a dent in that year, like in terms of games that I've played. I don't own any consoles, so I was somewhat limited in terms of which games that I could actually spend any time with. Also, some of the games that I played, I spent like hundreds of hours with because they were just really addictive games, really just fun, addictive games. 2017 was crazy. Like, I think it's probably the best year in the history of the medium in terms of just like quantity and quality. We saw a lot of games that really focused on doing one thing and really doing it well and giving us like these unique experiences like PUBG or Divinity Original Sin. We also saw games that really championed and prioritized player-driven problem solving and experiences like Breath of the Wild and Prey. It was a great year. There's going to be a ton of links down in the description. I did a podcast on this. It's about 2 hours long with a couple of friends that you can check out also if you want more. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and these are my top 10 games of 2017. Number 10 is Strafe. Now, Strafe is a roguelike first-person shooter. It has a 90s aesthetic that harkens back to Doom, Descent, and Quake. It reminds a lot of last year's Devil Daggers. Now, where that game took an elegant, minimalist design approach, Strafe aims for a more in-your-face, extreme style. And it gets a lot right. What it really does right is its namesake. For those of you not in the know, strafe jumping originated in Quake. It was the result of a bug that occurred when the player both jumped and strafed at the same time. The effect was a constant increase in momentum, allowing players to fly through levels at ludicrous speeds. This is the key conceit of Strafe, and it's one of the things that the game really nails. Rarely has it felt as good to fly through the air, gaining momentum with each tap of the spacebar, and pop heads. Strafe makes this feel fluid and rewarding. There's just a pure joy to propelling yourself through 3D space, turning swarms of enemies into pixelated geysers of hot sauce. The game does a respectable job of updating the projectile dodging ballet of Doom into full 3D. This allows scenarios that Quake never permitted due to its engine's limited enemy count. In Doom, movement was priority, dodging and weaving through projectiles to survive. Quake added dimension, but focused more on the shooting than the dodging. Strafe combines the best of both and translates that into a roguelike format. However, the game stumbles in a host of other ways. When first released, it was a mess, and about a dozen patches have corrected all of the worst issues. While nostalgic at first, levels can get repetitive, boring, and even confusing. This is unfortunate given the difficulty of the game. More than anything else, your goal is to get to the end of a level without taking any damage. A small mistake some 20 minutes into a run can stop you dead in your tracks. Now, they recently introduced a save system which alleviates a lot of the headaches, allowing you to restart levels. But sometimes damage just seems unavoidable, which it feels cheap. And after a while, this becomes frustrating, which is why I never beat the game. For me, Strafe is a warm-up set for bigger things. When I want to warm up for PUBG, but I need something fast and ultra-violent to get my blood up and aim on, 20 minutes of Strafe is perfect. It's sort of a guilty pleasure on this list, if there is such a thing. I don't think it showed up on anybody else's top 10 list. It's a flawed game, but it's a game that I just can't help but love. I have a confession to make. I've never played an Assassin's Creed game before, despite the fact that the series is over a decade old and as ubiquitous as can be. It just hasn't happened. When I saw that the series had chosen ancient Egypt, I knew it would be a really good time for me to jump in. Assassin's Creed Origins accomplishes the goal of a convincing portrayal of late-era Egypt very well. The game's world is a joy to explore with vast cities, hidden temples, and, of course, the treacherous hippopotamus pits awaiting at every corner. The game's many sites convince thanks to an exceptional graphical presentation and attention to detail. The cracks in the pyramids crumble, camels spit at you, and sandstorms envelop you in dust. This game is a graphical marvel. The world just really worked for me. So did the Far Cry-style bandit camps and side quests. What worked less were the linear main quest missions, instant fail states, and escort quests. Combat has been retooled from the sort of parry-spam Batman style of the past to a more Dark Souls-light style. But it lacks the weight and tension of Souls, due to floaty attacks and odd enemy telegraphing. What should have been rewarding in tactical combat ends up feeling spammy. It's still a lot of fun, but it needs more refinement. I expect the next Assassin's Creed game might nail this. Assassin's Creed Origins is a game with a breathtaking setting. It is rewarding to explore and exhilarating to inhabit. I am so happy to finally play an open-world game that doesn't take place in some bizarre variation of medieval Europe. All my life, I've been waiting for a breathtaking rendition of ancient Egypt, and Assassin's Creed Origins is exactly that. Number 8 is Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Now, Wolfenstein 2 demonstrates how story and gameplay can have dissonance absent tonal disagreement. It's not that BJ killing hundreds of Nazis somehow conflicts with the narrative, it doesn't. The action of the gameplay speaks to and finds reflection in the story. They complement each other in theme, yet in a way they feel worlds apart. There's a sort of experiential, dare I say, phenomenological gap between the story and the gameplay here. Wolfenstein 2 has some of the better writing I've seen in a game. The characters are well drawn with excellent dialogue, interactions, and sequences. I can think of few games that have so successfully executed this kind of scenes you will witness in this game. It is completely audacious. Great effort went into crafting every sequence, line of dialogue, set piece, and it shows. Without question, the narrative execution justifies the price of admission. This is a very rare thing to hear from me. I am not a big story guy, but Wolfenstein 2 just blew me away with its incredible storytelling. Now, what isn't quite so incredible are the levels and gameplay. They lack the polish and execution that is so present in the storytelling. When this game hits its stride, it is something to behold. Tearing through Nazis while dual-wielding the best shotgun since Doom 2 is rapturous. Yet, for every moment of brilliance, there are awkward, half-baked encounters or instances of just bad level design, and I mean bad, reminiscent of the worst tendencies of early FPS design. It's clear where the time, effort, and money went, and it's a shame. Had this game received the time it needed in terms of its gameplay and level design, it could have been up there with 2016's Doom as one of the greatest FPS games of all time. Instead, it's my number 8 game of the year. Number 7 is Tekken 7? The 7th entry in the Tekken series. Hell yeah, I've been playing these games for like almost 20 years. For me, no other fighting game even comes close. Tekken has always been about deep fighting mechanics and rewarding multiplayer. So you want to play this game with your friends or online for the best possible results. Fighting games have suffered as of late because they have a really high barrier to entry. They just require a lot of practice to be good at. Tekken 7 manages to marry depth and accessibility, and it pulls it off with style. For starters, there's a selection of easy-to-learn characters, specifically designed with new players in mind. They have painless-to-execute one-button combos, and they generally respond well to button mashing. The game also features a last-chance recovery mechanic. What this means is that new players can come play the game and not feel in over their head. This accessibility is well paired with the more nuanced and difficult to master characters. The effect is a game that is endlessly deep, yet still really inviting to newcomers. An excellent single-player campaign is perfectly paired with a robust multiplayer and near-perfect netcode. The result is online matches that are as responsive and rewarding as those played in the same room. Finally, this is the first freaking Tekken game to come to PC, which is incredible, but seriously, that shit took way too long. Tekken 7 gets my vote for the best fighting game out there right now. Check it out. If we never receive another Dishonored game, I'm going to be upset. But Death of the Outsider is not the worst way for the series to go out. Dishonored has always been a stealth-based immersive sim series set in this sort of City 17 steampunk-style universe. Death of the Outsider takes what made the previous games great and subtly refines that. No longer punished for wanton murder, the game allows you to play each level more or less however you want. The magical abilities of the previous games have been streamlined to a small but well-considered number. Your magic bar refills when you're out of combat, allowing for more frequent leverage of said magic. The game is all about player expression. You want to sneak like a ghost through the levels? There's dozens of ways to do so. Want to leave a pile of bodies and viscera in your wake? Also an option. More than previous games in the series, Death of the Outsider opens up the sandbox to the player's delight. If I could only praise one of Arcane's many virtues, it would be their level design. They craft 3D spaces as well as anyone in the industry. It's the main reason that they'll show up more than once on this list. The city of Karnaca unfurls in all directions, revealing verticality and sprawl. Nooks and crannies give way to secrets and shortcuts, rewarding careful investigation. These levels manage to convince of the reality while at the same time enticing you to exploit them with their gameplay. And they're not just fun to look at. Careful consideration reveals wildly different tactical possibilities which allow for endless replayability. Optional objectives force the player to experiment in ways they might not have considered. After spending an hour non-lethally choking out and storing every guard on a level in a basement, I received an optional objective to kill them all. The toss of a grenade made my kill count go from 0 to 40 in a few seconds, but the result was absurd fun and a playstyle I might not have chosen otherwise. Death of the Outsider might be the best Dishonored game. It rejects the frill of trying to put a story or set pieces in the foreground. Instead, it focuses on world-class level design and player creativity. This is a game that rewards outside-of-the-box thinking, allowing players to resolve problems in their own way. Without question, the only way to play Dishonored is with waypoints and quest markers turned off. Doing so creates one of the most gratifying and immersive stealth experiences on the market. Where Wolfenstein's story and gameplay compete with one another, Edith Finch manages to marry the two in pretty much perfect harmony. Finch is the story of a 17-year-old girl returning to her recently abandoned family home. As the player explores the estate, the history of the family reveals itself in short vignettes. The entire experience is only about 2 to 3 hours long, and I highly recommend you play it in a single sitting. The narrative manages to walk the line between heartfelt, humorous, and tragic. The result is a story that will leave few eyes dry. Finch is what has become known as a walking sim, and I would argue that it's among the best of the style. It uses its mechanics not as objects to be mastered, but as a method of expression to add color to its many characters. In a 2017 article for The Atlantic titled "Video Games Are Better Without Stories," video game theorist Ian Bogost raised the following question about Finch. Why does this story need to be told as a game? Good question. Would Finch have been better told as a short story or film? Perhaps. However, Finch does manage to use its mechanics in a way that add to its narrative presentation. Allowing the player to control exploration helps personalize Edith's story. You gain some ownership over what happens in a way that is different from film or books. It's difficult to say if the game is better or worse for the medium it shows, but does it really matter? Games like Finch, Firewatch, and Gone Home are proving to be the video game equivalent of a short story. Because they are games, they manage to use their space to tell stories in a way that is unique. It may not be the most effective way to convey a narrative, but it hardly makes it a poor choice. Finch connected with me at an emotional level. I have thought about it many times after playing it. Its space, characters, and story will occupy my mind for far longer than the 3 hours running time of the game. Finch is a game that wants to be experienced and reflected upon, and that's why it's my number 5 game of the year. spent so much of the early part of the year playing this game, mostly just a run or two a day, and that may not sound like a lot, but when a run lasts an hour or so, it becomes a daily practice, a meditation, if you will. Dead Cells is a roguelike Metroidvania that combines branching paths with procedural generation, and it does this really well. To combat backtracking, portals are scattered throughout each level. This allows the player to sort of jump around at will. The result is a game that prioritizes user exploration and navigation, yet avoids backtracking. The combat in the game resembles that of the 8-bit side-scroller. It updates this with a dodge roll from Dark Souls, a health recovery mechanic from Bloodborne, and cooldowns a la Risk of Rain. The result is combat that manages both depth and elegance while remaining intuitive. The number of tools at your disposal permit wildly different styles of play. You can be a trap-setting defensive type, a stealthy backstabber, or aggressive wielder of a huge sword. It's up to you. Much like The Binding of Isaac, the sheer breadth of possibilities makes it so that no two runs really feel the same. This gives rise to a game that consistently surprises you. Graphically, the game is a spectacular 2.5D that walks the line between nostalgic and modern. Light sources reflect off objects, rendering pixels with depth and dimension. Enemy design is well considered, informative at a glance, and pleasing to the eye. Bosses tower and make for excellent encounters. The game both looks and sounds great. It's worth noting that Dead Cells remains in early access. This won't be the only game that spent all or most of 2017 in early access on this list. Once a graveyard for asset flips, student projects, and aborted ambitions, early access now boasts some of the most enjoyable games in recent memory. When this game first released in early 2017, it felt complete, a full experience more than worthy of the $15 I paid for it. Over the year, it has only continued to grow and improve, with major content patches every month or so. Dead Cells remains among my most cherished run-based games. I can't wait to see where it goes as development continues. Number 3 is Divinity Original Sin 2. The isometric CRPG is a genre I assumed long dead. Who wants to play a game with a limited perspective, mouse clicking for movement, and reams of dialogue? I was pretty sure that I didn't. I can't say how happy I am that I was wrong about that. Any other year, Divinity Original Sin 2 would have been my undisputed game of the year. An absolute masterwork of writing and design, this title has been claimed to be among the very best RPGs ever made. It succeeds thanks to its deep systemic possibilities, robust combat, and rich character writing. Minigames present themselves as offering a wide degree of agency. It's an attempt to capture what pen and paper gaming is, a collaborative and creative experience. Tabletop gaming allows for so many more options. A dungeon master can change the rules on the fly, reacting to the player's ideas in real time. Game developers have limits on what they can place into a game. Original Sin 2 aims for the spirit and experience of tabletop gaming in a digital form. It achieves this goal with incredible success. Every character in the game is killable. Quests have dozens of possible solutions. Combat encounters play out like games of chess with near infinite permutations. It's a series of complex systems interacting for which the only failure state is death. This means player experiences will vary in profound ways. One player might recruit a character to their party, while another will face off against that same character in a boss battle. Original Sin 2 is more than just a sandbox of choices. The game's combat rivals XCOM in its turn-based bliss. That the title lacks random encounters only further elevates the quality on display here. Every battle has been crafted by the developers for maximum impact. This ensures that engagements remain fresh and challenging. Bouts can last up to an hour and demand careful consideration and tactical thinking. They also are hard as hell. If you find reloading battles frustrating, the game's Explorer difficulty setting might be for you. It makes the combat encounters more manageable without going full baby mode. Original Sin 2 boasts some of the finest character writing and voice acting in recent memory. Even minor characters are richly drawn and expertly voiced. It's amazing how well acted every role in the game was, particularly compared to its genre peers. Unlike the throwaway dialogue in many games, every character was both voiced and written in a way that was convincing. the inhabitants of Rivellon all add to the world in unique and wonderful ways. This is a game absent filler. Every quest, combat encounter, and line of dialogue feel purposeful. The long running time never ceases to surprise or delight. The game is for anyone who enjoys RPGs, sandbox games, tactical combat, or exploration. It's also one that, perhaps more so than any other, has come closest to capturing the experience of tabletop gaming in digital form. Did I mention it has 4-player co-op? While currently only available on PC, expect a console release in 2018. Prey gets my vote for the most underrated game of the year. Its promotions seem to have failed to impart what the game was really all about. It didn't get a lot of buzz from the media, and it only made a few top 10 lists. It doesn't help that Bethesda's review policy prevented journalists from playing the game before release. The result was a bunch of rushed and hastily considered reviews written under a deadline. This made for a critical consensus that seemed to miss the point. Playing Prey under a deadline is like chugging an expensive bottle of wine. You're just not going to be able to appreciate it that way. Prey is another game from Arcane, another immersive sim. While Dishonored took its cues from Thief, Prey adheres to the school of System Shock 2. If there was one thing to knock the game for, it would be how closely it hews to the blueprint of that game. This might be a problem if lots of other games did that, but System Shock 2 is a game without peers and absent imitators. Even its spiritual sequels in the BioShock series failed to really capture what so many loved about System Shock 2. They just don't make games like this anymore, and they haven't for a long time. And Prey doesn't just copy System Shock 2's formula. For me, it perfects it. This is, I think, the best game in the Shock series. Others have suggested that it should have had Shock in the title, and I agree. However, Psychoshock isn't the greatest name. Maybe Neuroshock, I don't know. While BioShock focused on narrative, streamlining its systemic interactions for a mass audience and a controller, Prey takes the opposite approach. The narrative presented is much less bombastic than anything you find in a BioShock game. Yet for this, the characters that populate the world are far more believable and realistic. The game's audio logs focus on personal issues like relationship difficulties, workplace politics, or planning a D&D game. The inhabitants of Talos 1 are real people. They are tech and service workers in space, not Homeric heroes and villains. This makes for a far more plausible, if low-key, narrative. But what it accomplishes instead is allowing the player narrative to take center stage. Prey is less about the corporate mismanagement that results in the downfall of Talos 1, and more about the player's experience of navigating, investigating, and interacting with that station. Talos 1 is a marvel of design. It is without question the best character in the game. Once again, Arcane's brilliance at level design is on full display. The result is a world that reminds of the deliberate and intentional construction of the original Dark Souls. The real joy of Prey comes when you turn off quest markers and explore the station organically. The other game this year that Prey has most in common with is Breath of the Wild. Both are open-world, systems-driven games whose main goal are exploration and player-guided problem-solving. Both provide a wide variety of tools, allowing for creative solutions to any dilemma. And there are really a lot of ways to solve any problem that Prey throws at you. To show any of them here would be to spoil the magic. Even after I completed the game, I was surprised to hear of strategies I would have never thought possible during my initial playthrough. Prey is an immersive and rewarding game, but it's one that requires patience. Sadly, Prey failed to impress most critics or make much of an impact with its sales. The promise of DLC has gone quiet, leading to the assumption of its cancellation. Prey deserved a lot more recognition than it received. I believe that time will remember the game as an overlooked classic and masterful entry into the immersive sim genre. It's an absolute must-play, particularly for fans of the Shock series. Number 1 is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Now, I already made an entire video on PUBG, and playing the game has consumed over 250 hours of my life, and I still can't stop. It's one of the reasons that this video took so long to make, all those pesky PUBG breaks. Host of the Foo Show, Will Smith, not that Will Smith, but the other Will Smith, said the following: "The scariest thing I've ever seen in a game is another person in a solo game of PUBG." I can think of nothing that more perfectly sums up the magic of PUBG. It's the type of game I've dreamt of my whole life. A game that has given me an emotional range, providing feelings that no other has. I felt more immersed, more afraid, more in tune with what was happening in this game than pretty much anything else. It's kind of wild. For most players, PUBG starts off as sort of a multiplayer stealth game, and this is something I've wanted for a long time, particularly since MGS5. But over time, a natural arc occurs. As your skills in the game increase, it goes from a multiplayer stealth game to a game where you hunt humans. That's right, I said hunt other humans, because PUBG is a game whose real goal is about people hunting people. This is very different from your standard deathmatch, where the goal is really just to kill other people. The key here is hunting. Instead of hiding from people, you seek them out. It's all about spotting another player and then silently stalking them. PUBG is just all about stalking, setting up traps, and knowing when to engage and when to run and hide. It's a game that privileges strategy and tactics over reaction time, and it's a game I can't freaking stop playing. Like, seriously, I think I have a problem. I could talk about PUBG forever, but this video is getting really, really long. If you want to know more of what I think about PUBG, there's a link in the description to an entire video I did on that game. If you made it this far, I thank you, man. It really means a lot to me. Please comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I did a much longer podcast about 2017 about 2 months ago with some friends. You can find a link to that in the description, or you can find us on iTunes as Jump Crouch. We do regular podcasts, talk about video games. If you want to get more content from me, that's a great place to find it. Let me know, what were your favorite games of 2017? Do you disagree with me? Let me know what you think. What did I get wrong? What did I get right? Put it in the comments. Stay tuned for new episodes of The NOSHOW coming soon, and please check out my podcast. Thank you so much.